How's it going, guys? It's Eclipse here, and today we are looking at one of the best events that you can take part on in World of Tanks console, and that is the on-track event to the Object 268. And yes, this might seem like a weird video topic for today's one, but ultimately it's because I absolutely love this vehicle, and it is so powerful in the right hands. This thing is just a monstrosity, and it can pump out so much damage, and it's so easy to play, to be honest. It's a case of putting yourself in a decent position and just farming damage using the 850 alpha damage gun that this vehicle gets, and being able to reload in about 12 seconds. Yes, that's right, 850 damage in 12 seconds, which means you can stare at things like the Turan and pump them, whilst also being able to bounce a few rounds with this vehicle. If you do play it right and you just be a little bit of a troll and you're kind of shimmying left and right as you're playing this vehicle. But I want to talk more about the kind of the tech tree leading up to it within this video, as well as the tank itself, because ultimately the on-track event allows you to gain an extra 20, in fact it's the premium bonus event, sorry, that gives you the extra 50% more silver and extra 50% more XP, so it's even better than the on-track event, which means that you can not only get way more silver, and by that I mean I'm earning like 100,000 silver in every single game that I'm playing the Object 268 in World War II, that is, without any silver boosters, etc. And that does include a premium account, but at the end of the day it doesn't matter all too much. Not having the premium account, you can still earn a ton of silver using this thing, using the event. And the good thing about playing it in something like the Object 268 is that it's really cheap to run, because the standard rounds of this vehicle, they can pen very reliably, so it means you don't really have to fire premium. Now, if you do decide to actually fire premium, however, let's just say nothing in the game can really stand the penetration that this thing can output. You can effectively pen Kranvang turrets with ease every single time using the heat penetration of 395mm. That comes very close to the Jaeger's heat rounds, but essentially nothing you see will be able to really bounce anything, unless of course you hit tracks with the heat rounds, but at the end of the day, most of the time if you're hitting tracks you want to be firing AP anyway, and 300 penetration is what you get with the AP rounds, which isn't probably more than enough to go through 90% of vehicles regardless of what it is that you're facing. But that being said, all of the benefits of the Object 268, not only the mobility, the kind of armor that is actually kind of trollish to a degree, having the kind of ability to just churn out damage left, right and center using the damage per minute that this vehicle has, but it's just got pretty much everything that you need from a tank destroyer. And if you're interested in playing an aggressive one, then the 268 is where I would suggest going. So it's kind of where I enjoy playing this vehicle. And if you are an aggressive tank destroyer player, I highly recommend you actually check out the equipment slot that allows you to swap between your rounds, because this comes in vital on something like the 268, where maybe you see a little batch at 25T, and yes, I did just hit him for 1091 damage and I reload in 12 seconds, so the 90mm of penetration that you get with the premium rounds are basically enough to go through most medium tanks if you hit the side of them, or alternatively if you ever find yourself up against the rear of a heavy tank, you can pen most heavy tanks in the rear with one of these, and of course light tanks are basically a free pen if you do hit them with the HE, but even if you don't, then 850 alpha can also high roll up to 1000 anyway, so sometimes you can get lucky with the 1000 rolls. But yeah, if you fire the HE, it's 1150 guaranteed damage, I believe, off the top of my head. So really nice, and it's also very good for if you're coming up against tanks that maybe are like heavy tanks that are kind of hold down, something like an IS-7 that's just being super boring, which you can still pen with the heat rounds of this thing in the turret. If you hit the kind of flattest parts of the cheeks, you can still pen. But it's not necessarily a guarantee. But the thing that you can guarantee is just the output and the ability to just remove the hit points off of pretty much any vehicle in the game. And you do it so quickly that people cannot just sit in front of you, because they can bounce off of you, remember. Like, you're basically not going to really bounce off of them. You're seeing me pen the front of this Badger in the superstructure, not even the lower plate or anything like that. So yeah, there's plenty of things you can use this tank like, and it's why I really do enjoy playing something like the Object 268, because you do have such versatility, and you're just able to do a lot of things that maybe other vehicles just wouldn't be able to do and get away with. And of course you can peak vehicles that maybe you wouldn't expect you'd be able to peak. You see me trying to go for a quick shot on the Badger here, doesn't quite work off, but you know, having picked up 5,300 damage, it's very, very nice, and we're hoping we can get a shell into the batch at 25 here, who is of course YOLOing towards our heavy tank, or potentially trying to come up from behind us, or whatever he's doing. He obviously can one-shot us, so I'm a little bit hesitant as to what he's going to do. We have got the HE round loaded just in case, so we can maybe derp him for 1,100, get our total over 6,000 if he does manage to come out, but it's looking like maybe he won't within this game. But don't worry, because we have got 2 whole games that you can actually have a look at if you're interested in seeing, and we actually find out that the Batchat is indeed over on this side. It looks like he was over in the bushes in B0 or A0. So we're going to push up, see if we can get a shot into him. Of course I could go for the cap, but at this point, like, it's just not going to happen anyway, and I'm more after the damage anyway, so yeah, it's a little bit disappointing that we lost this game. I could have potentially gone for cap, maybe, but this is one of those things where you just try and get the damage, but unfortunately at the end we don't even manage to get any damage, because the Batchat plays like he probably should and doesn't just YOLO over the top to try and get a shot into me, and we come out with a defeat. Of course, most videos on this channel are defeats at the moment, but you're seeing there picking up 400,000 silver, but really nice one. Let's jump into the next one. Now the next replay that I have, I almost feel bad for the enemy team, because we just do some pretty disgusting, dirty things, and effectively what we do on Corellia, which is one of the newest maps in the game, is that we sit in the K7. They did remove the rock that you could sit behind in that location, I guess, because they're trying to remove the campy aspect, but of course that's not going to deter us from sitting there, because we have very good camo in the Object 268. 300 meters still concealment, which for a fairly meaty and boxy tank is not bad whatsoever. You also get about 500 meters view range. I think we're using advanced optics in this thing, along with advanced loader, and of course the enhanced reload, where you can swap between the rounds for free, since it's really nice to be able to kind of have that extra damage, or maybe if you need the extra penetration or something, to just have it easily. Of course you're seeing us trying to fully aim on the 263, which basically has no armor when you're firing heat in this thing, so yeah, we derp him for a nice amount of damage. And this is where the enemy team must hate coming up against something like a 268. It's like, if you poke it, you're taking 850 damage. If you don't poke it, you're having a terrible game. So it's just a case of, like, hopefully your team push far enough to be able to get a damaging shell and finish off the 268 before, like, it just carves up your entire team. But in this replay you're seeing here me just trying to aim at all of these heavies that are pushing a bit too aggressively, and we're just chunking away 800 hit points every single time we hit them. So it's very easy gameplay. The 268 does not require you to be some expert in being able to, I don't know, reposition yourself and mobilize yourself and use all of the camo perks possible and all of this. You can still make it work. Obviously it can get better if you know all of those things, but it's a very kind of nice, very chill tank to play, and it's probably why it's one of my most played vehicles in the game. It's because it doesn't take a lot of thought process. You know, you don't have to think about penning anything really. I mean, maybe sometimes if you're coming up against, I don't know, a mouse that's angling off a corner, maybe, but even then you can still probably pen at a ridiculous angle using the heat rounds anyway. But yeah, I really do find this thing to be superb when you're coming up against pretty much any heavy in the game, because it just nullifies their entire armor model. And it stops them from just pushing. And often you'll see a lot of the enemy team push really aggressively, and it always ends up actually working in the opposite direction and ends up kind of backfiring in their face as you kind of go to try and progress, go to try and advance towards the opponents. Maybe they try and do the same, but you have the 850 alpha compared to their probably 500 maybe if they're a heavy tank, up to 700 if they're an E100, but you also have that troll armor where they don't have the automatic pen to be able to deal damage to you guaranteed every time, but yeah, for you it's pretty much guaranteed. So we hit the E4 here, which is obviously a vehicle you don't want to be getting hit by since that has the 850 alpha as well. Whereas the 268 doesn't get the turret, the E4 does, but the E4 lacks in a bit of the, I guess, troll armor. Of course, it has very easy armor to pen once you know the weak points, whereas the 268 can, even if you know the weak points, can be a little bit troll, especially if the player is moving side to side, as you should when you're trying to bounce around in this thing. And what I mean by that is just zigzagging left and right as people try and aim for the unangled or angled section of your tank to be able to get a pen, but then as soon as they aim there, they then fire, you suddenly swap back to the opposite side and it ends up bouncing. So the 268 is definitely a troll. We try and go for an easy shell into the TNH here. Fortunately don't manage to hit it, but we now try and progress because the game is coming to a close and we've only done 4,300 damage in this replay, so ultimately I don't want to end it there. I want to get some more, which is something that you are constantly doing in the 268. It's like a screaming contest, I guess, to just YOLO forward to try and get some extra damage at the end of the games where maybe your team are a little bit too strong over the enemies. And yeah, it just ends up being pretty much a rout for their team. So you can see here the Jagdtiger, the TNH kind of holding up on this side of the map. And at this point I'm just thinking I've got 1,100 hit points, I can take both hits. I cannot take both hits from the TNH, but I could take one from either, so I'm just waiting for the TNH to get removed. And then it's just a case of trying to pinpoint a shell onto the Jagdtiger. Of course that has no armor, but unfortunately I believe we actually hit the tank in front of him, or we hit at a ridiculous angle, which of course just would never pen regardless of what tank you're in. We then just move forward and march towards the Jagdtiger, finishing him off, or at least hitting him right before he gets finished off by our 260 and coming away with a victory. So you saw there how quick the games are. 5,874 damage done within, what, like 5 minutes of the game starting. Really, really easy tank to play. One of my favourites indeed. I highly recommend you actually go out and you purchase this tank if you do actually have the ability to do that. Otherwise, I would highly recommend you go out and grind this tech tree line, because the ISU 152 is fantastic, the Object 704 is fantastic, maybe the SU 152 is not particularly great, but the SU 100, the tier 6, is amazing, and the SU 85, the tier 5, is also very, very good. So tier for tier, these vehicles are pretty decent, and they are auto aim and pen tanks basically, the whole lot of them. So yeah, really did enjoy making this video and did enjoy revisiting the Object 268 and giving it a little spin out in the garage. But other than that, I hope you did enjoy this video. Don't forget to check out some of the other videos like the T57 Heavy review and seeing whether it is actually worth grinding at this point, given the fact that Wargaming nerfed the T54E1. Other than that, I hope I see you there and I'll join you in the next one. Goodbye.